All right, now we're going to talk about how to add our extensions. So here you see one already done. Anything that you add that's really long, it does need to be supported. Here you can see I have the newspaper behind it and wrapped up paper towels because I want it to curve a little bit. Because gravity is not your friend. It will pull it down. So until it gets stronger, it needs to have something to support it behind it. Okay, so let's talk about how do you add clay. So you could just push it, but that is not structurally sound. When it is wet, it'll stick. By the way, you need to scratch both sides. Here you see I'm scratching the clay and then add water. And then now I'm just going to smooth it. So that is the 3 steps where you have to scratch both sides, you add water, and then you smooth the seams. So the seams are where both of the clay will meet. Again, I'm going to support this one. It isn't structurally sound yet. I do have to blend the other side, but I'm going to wait a little bit. So if you do make a mistake, my ear was a little too high, so I'm just going to lower it. Not a big deal. I'll just scratch both sides, add water. The clay is super wet right now, so it's easy to take it off and to reattach it. It's not a big deal. So we like it wet just so that you can kind of mold it, but it is floppy. It's not as strong at this stage. So that is how you add clay. You want to scratch both sides, add water, and then smooth it. So more needs to happen to make it more structurally sound, but for now, until it can firm up, this is good enough. Okay, so we're going to move on to now talking about coils because you want to be able to add more detail to your piece. Now remember, you have to cut away. And you have to make sure that you're adding on clay, and you also need to balance your effort, right? So I'm going to move this off to the side, and we're going to start talking about how to build and make coils. So think of it like when you used to play with Play-Doh. So all you're doing is using your fingers, and you're just rolling the clay up and back with your fingers. You want to try to keep the coils consistent. I want mine a little thinner. So I'm going to add it. I need to scratch both sides, and just like you would to attach your extensions, it's exactly the same thing. You're going to scratch both sides, add water, and then smooth it. Now, when you're doing coils, it's usually your detail work sometimes for the coils, especially when you go smaller. It's really hard to smooth the edges. So that one got really long, so I just pulled it apart so that I can keep the coils consistent. So when you need to smooth out your seams, if your fingers don't fit because you have detail work, you can use your blender and you can use a paintbrush. So you'll see that when I'm adding the coils. So again, scratch both sides, add water to both sides, and then you need to press the clay in. So if you notice, I'm kind of working the clay around, and I'm using my finger like a vise, and I'm just pushing it into the clay. So when you scratch both sides, it's kind of like Velcro, where it just really needs to be, it wants to be attached, but it can only happen when you have both sides kind of scratched. The last step is to smooth the seams. You can see I try to do it with my fingers. It doesn't really work, so I can use the blender, and I'm trying to push the seams to go together. You're going to see it's a little hard to get into some of those grooves. So I'm going to wet a paintbrush. Paintbrushes are by the sink, and it'll smooth it out a little bit. Okay? If you don't smooth it, it is not structurally sound, and it will cut you. So one thing I forgot to tell you about cutting out your pieces is clay does shrink about 10%. So when you cut out your out anything in the clay, you want to make it a little bit bigger than you think. So here I'm adding on some decorative details. You can kind of space them out to kind of get a look for what do you really want. And then get a toothpick and just kind of, because otherwise you don't know where to scratch. So just get a toothpick so you have a general area or space that you know you need to scratch. And then just add your water, attach your coils, and again just kind of move the clay around. Push on it, make a vise. And this will be structurally sound. If you run out, not a big deal, just add a little bit more. Sometimes when you're smoothing it and moving it around, it does become bigger. So not a big deal, you just pull off what you need.